So I want you to picture this. It's 1948, Adelaide, Australia. There's an unidentified dead man propped against a seawall on a quiet beach. His pockets are full of clues, but someone has methodically taken a razor blade and sliced away every single manufacturer tag on his clothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it gets weirder. He has a secret pocket sewn into his trousers containing a torn scrap of ancient Persian poetry, which, eventually leads to an uncrackable code and an unlisted phone number.
Right. I mean, it completely screams Cold War spycraft. Or maybe like a perfectly executed assassination.
Exactly. But before we start pulling on these incredibly weird threads, I need to give you a quick disclaimer for this deep dive. Today's discussion covers a really sensitive true crime case involving unverified theories, claims of espionage, and unconfirmed police investigations.
Which is super important to keep in mind, yeah.
Right. We aren't taking sides or endorsing any unverified claims, and that includes the massive 2022 DNA identification, which South Australia police have still not officially confirmed. We are simply exploring the facts, the science, and the theories contained in our source material.
Because the goal of this deep dive is to really lay out what is actually known, what is suspected by the experts, and what still completely, defies logic.
Totally. Because usually when we talk about a forensic investigation, there is this expectation of precision. Like, you find a body, you pull a wallet from the pocket, run some prints, the database gives you a match, and the detective just points and says, there he is, case closed.
Right. It's expected to be binary. The identity is either known or unknown.
But then you step onto Somerton Beach on December 1st, 1948, and suddenly that forensic X-ray machine is utterly broken. We are looking at an investigative landscape that is incredibly murky. A smartly dressed man is found dead on the sand with a half-smoked cigarette resting just on his collar as if it fell from his mouth the moment he died.
Oh.
And from day one, this was never treated as a standard John Doe case.
Well, because the scene immediately feels staged. I mean, he has absolutely no identification on him, no wallet, no driver's license. But even more than that, as you mentioned, every single tag on his clothing has been deliberately cut away.
Like, even the maker's mark in his shoes?
Yes, even the shoes, it's gone. His pockets contained an unused train ticket, a used bus ticket, some juicy fruit gum, and a packet of Army Club cigarettes. But inside that Army Club packet were cigarettes of a totally different, much more expensive brand called Consitas.
Which is just bizarre. And then weeks later, the police tracked down a suitcase checked at the Adelaide train station on the day before he was found. Inside is a stenciling kit, a table knife, and some specialized orange thread that perfectly matched the repair stitching in his pants.
Which proves it was his bag.
Right. There are also some clothes with the name T. Keane, spelled Keane, left on them. But bizarrely, there were no socks in the suitcase.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
No socks?
No socks. Who packs a bag for a trip, include a stencil kit and a butter knife, but completely forgets to pack socks?
It makes no sense. The missing labels, the mismatched cigarettes stuffed into the wrong box, the weirdly curated suitcase with a fake name left on just a few items, it all just screams tradecraft.
Yeah.
It feels like a sterilized scene, someone trying to obscure their origin.
Yeah, trying to be a ghost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the autopsy takes that suspicion and magnifies it. The doctor found that the man's spleen was 3 times its normal size.
3 times?
Yeah. There was massive congestion in his liver and brain, which usually points to a severe toxic reaction. But there was no obvious cause of death. 3 different medical witnesses at the inquest agreed the death wasn't natural. So the coroner strongly suspected a fast-acting, exotic, and untraceable poison.
Okay, I have to push back on that. Assuming it's an invisible exotic poison just because the guy's neck is cricked against a wall is like, well, it's like hearing hoofbeats and assuming it's a zebra instead of a horse.
You don't buy the poison theory.
Not at all. Look at Professor Derek Abbott's Reddit AMA on this case. He points out that if this guy was poisoned with something that caused massive organ congestion, where is the vomit? Where are the signs of thrashing around in the sand?
There weren't any.
Exactly. The lividity, the pooling of blood was found predominantly in his ears and the back of his neck. That actually makes perfect scientific sense as positional asphyxia.
Oh, because of how he was sitting.
Right. He was propped up with his head cricked against the seawall, which can cut off venous return and literally suffocate you. The guy was likely just sick, which explains the enlarged spleen, sat down to rest, fell asleep, and suffocated simply because of how his head was positioned.
Okay, the medical evidence definitely supports a tragic natural accident. I'll give you that. But the staging of the body and the missing tags, however, make a simple medical event feel entirely too neat.
It is weird.
And since the physical body yielded a bunch of dead ends, the investigation shifted to a single, incredibly strange hidden clue that they didn't even find until months later.
Oh, right. April 1949. A pathologist takes another closer look at the dead man's clothing and finds a tiny secret fob pocket sewn deeply into the waistband of his trousers.
A hidden pocket.
Yeah, and inside is a tightly rolled up scrap of paper.
Printed on that scrap are two words, Tamam Shud. It's Persian, and it basically translates to "it is ended" or "it is finished."
So dramatic.
It is. The police discover the scrap was torn from a very specific 12th century book of Persian poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The overarching theme of this poetry book is living life to the fullest and having no regrets when your life inevitably ends.
Which naturally sounds like a highly poetic suicide note.
It really does sound like a man making peace with his end, until a local man walks into the police station a few months later with a totally bizarre story.
Oh, the car guy.
Yes, he says he found a copy of the Rubaiyat tossed into the back seat of his unlocked car right around the time the body was discovered. And sure enough, the microscopic paper fibers match. The Tamam Shud scrap in the dead man's pocket was torn directly from the final page of this exact book.
What?
But on the back cover of this book was something that catapulted this case into global infamy. Someone had lightly penciled in an uncrackable 5-line code of scrambled capital letters.
Uncrackable is not an exaggeration. Military intelligence looked at it. Top Navy cryptographers analyzed the sequencing. Nobody could break it.
And you have to consider the historical backdrop here, right?
Yeah.
It's 1948. We are at the absolute height of Cold War paranoia. The Berlin blockade is happening. Soviet spy rings are a genuine global terror.
Yeah.
You have an unidentified man with sterilized clothing, a suspected exotic poison, a hidden Persian message in a secret pocket, and a code that the Department of Defense can't break.
Okay, but let's apply some statistical logic to that uncrackable code for a second. In Professor Abbott's 2018 thesis, his team ran computational p-value testing on those exact letters.
P-value testing?
Yeah, for anyone unfamiliar, a p-value isn't just a generic score. It's a specific statistical measurement used to calculate the probability that something happened purely by random chance. The lower the p-value, the less likely it's a coincidence.
Right, okay.
Because the body was found near a racetrack, a lot of people assumed the letters were just the initials of horse names the guy was betting on. But the p-value test proved the frequency of those letters did not match horse names at all. The probability was less than 0.05.
So not horses?
Not horses. However, when they tested the letters against the initials of Australian beach names, the p-value was much higher. Statistically, the letter frequency perfectly matches what you'd see if someone was just writing down a list of beaches.
Wait, just a mundane list of beaches?
Yes, think about the logic. If you are a highly trained Cold War spy operating in a hostile country, why are you using a massively popular poetry book to write down a code that literally traces back to a local nurse?
Oh, right, the phone number.
It's terrible tradecraft. You don't leave a paper trail that points directly to your contacts.
Well, that bad spycraft actually gave investigators their first physical anchor in the real world. Because, as you said, that code wasn't the only thing scribbled on the back cover of the Rubaiyat. There are also 2 unlisted phone numbers.
Yeah.
One of them belonged to a woman named Jessica Jo Thompson, often referred to in the police files as Jestin. And as it turns out, she lived just a few hundred yards from Somerton Beach.
Which is incredibly convenient.
Right. So the police obviously bring her in. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean shows her a plaster death mask that the coroner cast of the Somerton Man's face.
Oh, creepy.
Very. And when she looked at the plaster cast, Lean noticed she appeared completely taken aback, to the point of nearly fainting right there in the room. She was visibly shaken, but she firmly denied knowing him. And the police in 1949 just let it go.
She almost faints at the sight of a dead man's face, claims she's never seen him in her life, and the detectives just say, "All right, have a nice day." That is staggering incompetence.
They really didn't press her. Decades later, her own daughter, Kate, went on the record saying her mother had a profound dark side. Kate claimed her mother knew how to speak Russian, which was highly unusual for an Australian nurse at the time.
Yeah, very weird.
And once ominously told her that the identity of the Somerton Man was a matter for higher powers.
Higher powers.
Wow. And the human drama gets even more intense. Jessica Thompson had a son named Robin. Robin was born shortly after the Somerton Man died, and Robin shared 2 incredibly rare genetic anomalies with the Somerton Man.
Oh, the physical traits.
Yeah. Both men had a specific, unusually shaped ear, and both had hypodontia, which is the natural absence of certain teeth. You calculate the mathematical odds of those two physical oddities overlapping in the same geographic area, and it is astronomical.
So the rumor mill immediately kicks into high gear. People start theorizing they were star-crossed lovers, or it was a secret love child, or they were running a Soviet spy ring
I
together.
mean, it's the ultimate cinematic narrative. Was she his handler? Were they lovers caught in a geopolitical game way bigger than themselves?
It makes for a fantastic movie script, but cold, hard science ruins the cinematic ending here. When advanced DNA testing was finally applied to the descendants in this case, it definitively ruled out Robin Thompson as the Somerton Man's son.
Totally ruled out.
There was absolutely zero genetic link. People desperately want Jessica Thompson to be a Russian spy because she had a dark side and learned a few foreign words. That is like assuming someone is an international elite hacker just because they know how to clear their browser history and use a VPN.
Okay, fair point.
Mhm.
Her being a master spy might be a stretch, but her visceral reaction to the death mask is still a documented historical fact.
Yeah.
She recognized him. She just absolutely refused to tell the police how.
True.
Which brings us to the technological bombshell of 2022. For 74 years, the identity of the Somerton Man was a total black hole. Then, Professor Derek Abbott and a forensic genealogist named Colleen Fitzpatrick make an enormous public announcement. They claim to have finally solved the mystery using genetic genealogy.
And they couldn't use the body itself because it was buried, right? So they extracted DNA from hairs that were physically stuck in that 1948 plastered death mask when it was pulled off his face.
Exactly. They extracted the DNA from the root of the hair, built a genetic profile, and uploaded it to GED Match, which is an open-source genetic genealogy database. They weren't looking for a direct hit.
They were looking for relatives.
Right, distant cousins.
Yeah.
By triangulating the shared DNA, they built a massive family tree of about 4,000 people and methodically narrowed it down. They zeroed in on one man who completely vanished from the public record in 1947.
An electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne named Charles Webb.
Born in 1905, making him 43 years old when he died. Suddenly, all these weird, disparate puzzle pieces start snapping into place. Archival records show Webb separated from his wife, Dorothy, in April 1947.
Okay.
And where did Dorothy move after the separation? To a small town called Butte in South Australia, which is just 89 miles from Adelaide, where the body was found.
Which also perfectly explains the suitcase with the clothes labeled T. Keen. Carl Webb had a sister named Frida. Archival records show Frida was married to a man named Thomas Keen. The clothes in the suitcase weren't some elaborate spy misdirection. They were literally just hand-me-downs from his brother-in-law.
Right. So if hair grows about a centimeter a month, what did the physical analysis of the hair actually tell them about his movements before he died?
Okay, this is where the hard science gets incredibly cool. They used an inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer, or ICP-MS. They took a single shaft of hair, shot it with a literally laser ablation, and measured the isotopes.
Wow.
Strontium is a mineral absorbed into your body through local drinking water and the food grown in local soil. So as your hair grows, it basically acts like a geological tape recorder of everywhere you've been.
That's fascinating.
Right. They found massive spikes in strontium in the older sections of the hair. The strontium levels in Adelaide are relatively low, but the levels found in his hair suggest he might have spent time in places with much higher strontium levels, like Bali or Japan, just months before arriving in Adelaide.
The precision of that is staggering. But for me, it's Webb's personal history that is the real revelation. He wasn't some glamorous Cold War operative running covert missions. He had a heavily documented history of severe mental instability.
Right, the suicide attempt.
A horrific suicide attempt using ether in 1946. His wife described him in divorce papers as violent, incredibly moody, and intensely solitary. In the 7 years before his death, he suffered massive trauma, losing 4 close family members, including a brother who died terribly as a POW on the Burma Railway.
That's incredibly sad.
It is. He loved writing poetry, and he loved betting on horses. This changes the entire emotional narrative of the case. He was a grieving, solitary, deeply unwell man who likely traveled to South Australia in a desperate attempt to track down his estranged wife.
Well, let's assume he is Carl Webb. I still have questions. Why did he vanish from all official records for 18 full months before washing up on Somerton Beach? How did he financially survive without a trace? And more importantly, if we look at the psychology, why did he methodically slice every single tag off his clothes? Suicidal or not, that takes serious dedication. If he just wanted to disappear or end his life, why the elaborate staging? Why hide the Persian poetry in a secret pocket?
Well, if he was prone to severe depressive episodes and extreme paranoia, as his wife suggested, cutting the tags might not be tradecraft at all. It might simply be a symptom of a mental break.
Like a delusion.
Exactly. He might have been experiencing a paranoid delusion, desperately trying to erase his identity so his wife couldn't be notified or so his family wouldn't face the shame of his suicide. The 2022 DNA identification doesn't actually solve the behavioral mystery. It just changes the nature of the questions we're forced to ask.
Yeah, and if this DNA evidence so perfectly explains who he is and connects all these familial dots, why does the mystery feel far from over? We need to look closely at the lingering doubts and the official silence from the authorities.
Right. Because in May 2021, South Australia police finally agreed to exhume the actual body of the Somerton Man from the cemetery. By December 2023, they had completed their own comprehensive DNA report using the actual bone remains, not just degraded hair from a plaster mask.
That.
But here we are, 3 years after Abbott's massive press conference claiming the case is closed, and the South Australia police still haven't officially confirmed that Carl Webb is the Somerton Man. They will only release statements saying they are cautiously optimistic.
We have to look at the mechanics of why they might be hesitant. Think about what this means for you, our listener. The DNA methodology Abbott's team used relied heavily on a process called imputation.
Right.
When you are dealing with highly degraded genetic material from a single 70-year-old hair, the DNA sequence is basically shattered. Imputation uses complex statistical models to guess and fill in the missing letters of the genetic alphabet.
Which is a widely used and respected technique in modern genetic genealogy.
It is, absolutely. But think about what this means for the certainty of the identification. Imputation is highly sophisticated guesswork. It is like trying to reconstruct an entire 500-page novel when you only have 3 surviving pages and a table of contents.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yes, based on the context clues, you might accurately guess the overarching plot of the book, but are we legally, scientifically certain? Or is this just confirmation bias driving the results? Only one hair sample was used for that specific sequence, meaning there is no material left for independent verification of that exact test.
And beyond the highly technical debate over imputation, there is a massive behavioral hurdle here that completely defies logic. The family recognition problem.
Yes, this is the wildest part.
Now, Carl Webb had multiple living siblings in Melbourne in 1948. When the Somerton Man was found, it was arguably the biggest news story in the country. His face was plastered all over front pages across Australia. The police were desperately asking the public for any clues, and yet not one single family member ever came forward to say, hey, that dead man on the beach looks exactly like our brother Carl.
And his own wife lived just 89 miles away from where the body was found.
Dorothy lived incredibly close. In 1951, 3 years after he was found dead on the beach, she officially filed for divorce on the grounds of desertion.
Seriously?
Yeah. How does a wife live that close, file for divorce because her husband vanished, and not recognize her own husband's face in the national news? Not only that, the clothes in the suitcase literally had the name T. Keene stamped on them.
His brother-in-law.
His own sister's husband was Thomas Keene. The family name was literally printed in the newspapers alongside his face. How does an entire extended family stay completely silent?
That behavioral anomaly is exactly why the police might be dragging their feet on making an official announcement. The physical evidence contradictions haven't been fully resolved. If it's Carl Webb, the complete family recognition failure defies all logical explanation.
Unless they knew.
Right. Did they recognize him and just collectively decide to let him remain anonymous because of the shame of suicide?
It's just wild. We started with a meticulously sterilized body on a beach in 1948, surrounded by untraceable poison theories, cut tags, and ancient Persian poetry. We traveled through Cold War espionage paranoia, uncrackable statistical codes, and secret phone numbers linking back to a local nurse. And we've arrived at a high-tech yet contested DNA identification of a solitary, grieving electrical engineer named Carl Webb.
A man whose own family seemingly erased him from their lives, leaving him to be an anonymous ghost for 7 decades.
Which leaves you with this truly haunting thought to mull over. We rely so heavily on science to give us the absolute truth. Science and DNA might eventually prove, without a shadow of a doubt, exactly who the Somerton Man was. But science can never explain human behavior.
No, it can't.
A mass spectrometer can tell us his hair absorbed strontium in Bali, but it can't tell us why he was there.
And DNA can't tell us why an entire family stayed completely silent while his face was front-page news. It can't tell us the emotional state he was in while he spent hours methodically cutting the tags out of his clothes, or how he survived in the shadows during those missing 18 months of his life.
Exactly. The ultimate uncrackable code in this story isn't the scrambled capital letters pencils on the back of a 12th century poetry book. It's the human mind.
We expect that forensic x ray machine to give us a clean binary answer, broken or not broken, known or unknown. But some human mysteries are completely immune to the x ray, and the Somerton Man might just be the greatest historical proof of that.